Hello, everyone. We live in a world that is increasingly interconnected, yet many of us feel more disconnected than ever. In a time when we are constantly updating our status, sharing what's happening, and curating our lives for the world to see, the question I want to ask you today is simple. When was the last time you truly shared what was really going on inside? Not just the headlines of your day, but the messy, imperfect, and real parts of your life. In our everyday lives, it's so easy to fall into the habit of performing. Whether it's at work, in social media, or even in our personal relationships, we often find ourselves curating a version of our lives that we believe others want to see. We show up with a mask, we play a role, and we deliver the lines we think people expect from us. But here's the thing, when we focus on performing, we miss out on the real gift of connection. Performance is based on trying to be something we're not. It's about shaping ourselves into an image, fitting into a mold that someone else created. It's about looking a certain way, saying the right things, and putting on a front that makes us seem like we have it all together. But true connection doesn't happen in that space. True connection happens when we step out of the role we've created and let people see us as we are flawed, uncertain human. You see, we all have a deep need to be seen, to be known, and to be accepted for who we really are. But when we're busy performing, we're not giving anyone the opportunity to truly see us. We're putting up walls, hiding behind facades that keep us isolated and distant from those around us. We think that by performing, we'll be liked, admired, or respected. But performance is surface level. It's a mask that keeps us disconnected from our own truth as well as from others. Let's break this down. How often have you shared something in a conversation that sounds more like a rehearsed script than an honest expression of yourself? Think about how many times you've offered a response that was more about fitting in, checking a box, or meeting expectations than it was about offering a genuine piece of who you are. We can all recall moments where instead of saying what we really feel, we say what we think people want to hear. The problem with this is that when we perform, we don't give people the chance to connect with the real us. We don't allow ourselves to experience the magic of authenticity. And without that kind of authenticity, relationships stay shallow. They stay on the surface, where it's safe, where it's predictable. But that's not where deep connections are made. Deep, meaningful connections are born out of vulnerability, the willingness to show up as you are in all your imperfection. This doesn't mean sharing every intimate detail or overexposing yourself. It means letting go of the need to be perfect, to have all the answers, and to put on a facade. It's about being real, even if that means showing your fears, your doubts, or the things you haven't figured out yet. When we show up authentically, when we stop performing, we invite others to do the same. And here's the paradox: when we stop performing, when we stop trying so hard to impress or fit into the mold of what we think people expect, we start to experience a kind of connection that is deep, raw, and incredibly human. It's in those moments where we share the truth of who we are, our struggles, our challenges, and even our failures, that we begin to forge connections that are not only genuine, but also transformative. I think about the people you feel closest to. Are they the ones who have shown you their perfect, polished lives, or are they the ones who have been real with you, the ones who have opened up about their fears, their dreams, their mistakes? The truth is, the relationships that matter most are the ones where vulnerability is shared. It's not the people who have it all together that we connect with most deeply. It's the ones who dare to show up imperfectly, who let us see the messiness of their lives. When we allow ourselves to stop performing, we stop hiding behind the mask of perfection. We stop measuring our worth by external validation, and we start measuring it by the depth of our relationships, by the quality of the connections we cultivate. We stop worrying about looking good and we start focusing on being real. And that shift from performing to connecting has the potential to change everything. It requires us to ask ourselves difficult questions. What's really going on with me? What am I holding back? What am I afraid to show? The answers to those questions are where our true selves lie. And when we have the courage to share those answers, to let go of the need to perform and control how others perceive us, we open ourselves to the possibility of deep, meaningful connection. When we stop performing and start connecting, we create the kind of relationships that make us feel seen, heard, and valued. And it's in those relationships where real growth, healing, and joy can happen. There's something deeply human about uncertainty. It's that space between what we know and what we don't, where the answers aren't clear and the path ahead feels foggy at best. Yet in our fast-paced, achievement-driven world, we often feel compelled to act like we have it all figured out. We want to present an image of confidence, of certainty, as if we've mastered every challenge, found all the answers, and moved seamlessly from one victory to the next. But here's the truth: uncertainty is where real growth happens. Too often, we think we must always have an answer. Whether it's at work, in our personal lives, or even within ourselves, we feel the pressure to project confidence and clarity, especially in situations where we are anything but certain. And so we hide our doubt, our fear, our questions, believing that uncertainty makes us weak or inadequate. We fear judgment, rejection, or being seen as unqualified if we admit that we don't have all the answers. But here's what I've learned: uncertainty is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a profound opportunity for connection and understanding. When we choose to share our uncertainty, we invite others to join us in a space of mutual exploration. We create room for learning, for growth, and for vulnerability. And when we share that uncertainty, whether it's about a decision, a relationship, or even our own self-doubt, we make it clear that we are human. We allow others to see our imperfections, to recognize that they are not alone in their own moments of doubt. Think about it. How often do you find yourself in a conversation where someone is speaking with total confidence, certain of their position, their viewpoint, or their answer? It's easy to get swept up in that certainty, to nod along as if we share the same conviction. But underneath, there's often a quiet discomfort, the nagging sense that we don't quite agree, or that we aren't as confident as they seem. We might even feel pressure to match their certainty, to hide our own uncertainty for fear of appearing weak or uninformed. But this creates distance. It keeps us in our own separate bubbles of self-doubt and insecurity, never allowing for real connection. Now, imagine a different kind of conversation, one where you can acknowledge your uncertainty, where the other person can share their own doubts, fears, and unknowns. In that space, there's freedom. Freedom to be yourself. Freedom to explore different ideas and perspectives. Freedom to recognize that uncertainty is a natural part of the human experience. When we share our uncertainty, we break down the walls of perfectionism and pretense. We show up as real people, doing the best we can with what we know at the time, and making space for others to do the same. And in this space, connection thrives. The beauty of uncertainty is that it's a fertile ground for new insights and perspectives. When we embrace the fact that we don't know everything, we open ourselves up to new ways of thinking, to new possibilities that we may not have considered before. We invite others to challenge us, to question our assumptions, and to help us see things from a different point of view. Take, for example, the workplace. How often do we walk into meetings or brainstorming sessions and immediately assume we need to have all the answers? How often do we present our ideas as if they are set in stone, never considering the possibility that we might be wrong or that there might be a better approach? But what if we showed up and said, I don't know exactly how to solve this, but here's what I'm thinking. What if we admitted that we don't have all the pieces, but we're willing to figure it out together? By sharing our uncertainty, we create an environment where creativity and collaboration can flourish. We invite others to contribute their ideas, their knowledge, and their insights. We foster a culture of curiosity, not one of rigid certainty. The same principle applies to our personal lives. How many times have we had conversations with friends or loved ones where we felt we had to hide our true feelings or our fears because we didn't want to appear uncertain or unsure? Whether it's about a difficult decision, a relationship challenge, or our own sense of identity, we often feel like we need to have it all figured out before we can talk about it. But the truth is, no one has everything figured out, and it's okay to admit that we don't either. When we share our uncertainty with others, when we admit that we're struggling to figure things out, or that we're not sure what the next step is, it opens the door for deeper conversations. We create a space where vulnerability is welcomed, where others can reflect back their own experiences and offer support. In those moments, we feel less isolated in our confusion and more supported in our search for clarity. This is also where empathy flourishes. When we share our uncertainty, we invite others to connect with us on a human level. It's no longer about putting on a facade of confidence, it's about acknowledging that we are all on this journey together. And by being open about our uncertainty, we create a sense of mutual understanding that transcends surface level interactions. We stop seeing others as perfect, always knowing figures and start seeing them as fellow travelers, navigating the messy and uncertain terrain of life. Moreover, sharing uncertainty doesn't mean we are indecisive or incapable. It's a sign of maturity and self-awareness. It shows that we understand we don't have all the answers, that we are willing to embrace the unknown, and that we are open to growth. Far from being a weakness, this willingness to admit our uncertainty is a strength. It takes courage to step into the unknown and to say, I'm not sure, but I'm ready to find out. At its core, sharing uncertainty is about trust. It's about trusting ourselves enough to be vulnerable and trusting others enough to share our doubts. It's about creating a community where people feel safe enough to ask questions, to express their fears, and to seek guidance without the pressure to always be right. When we embrace uncertainty, we cultivate a culture of learning and growth, one where answers are found together and where questions are as valuable as the answers themselves. One of the most powerful ways we can build meaningful, authentic relationships is by creating a space where others feel safe enough to be vulnerable. But here's the challenge: vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, a risk, or a liability. We've been conditioned to believe that we must always be strong, composed, and in control, never letting others see our fears, doubts, or insecurities. So we've learned to guard ourselves, to hide our true emotions behind walls of perfection, pride, or avoidance. But vulnerability is not a weakness. It is the root of courage. It is the very thing that allows us to be truly human, to connect with others on a deeper level, and to experience growth in ways that we never thought possible. And if we want others to feel safe enough to share their vulnerability with us, we first need to make space for it. We need to actively create environments, both in our personal and professional lives, where people can show up as their true selves without fear of judgment or rejection. When we think about vulnerability, we often imagine it as something that happens in moments of crisis, deep sadness, or overwhelming fear. But vulnerability doesn't always look like tears or breakdowns. It's in the quiet admission of uncertainty, in the decision to ask for help when we don't know the way forward, in the courage to speak up when we're not sure of the answer. It's in the willingness to reveal the parts of ourselves we've been taught to hide, whether that's a mistake we've made, a fear we've been carrying, or a dream we're afraid to share. The first step in making space for others' vulnerability is acknowledging that we too are vulnerable. If we can't recognize our own capacity for vulnerability, how can we ever expect to truly hold space for someone else's? Vulnerability is not something we do to others, it's something we do with others. It's a shared experience, a mutual act of trust that requires us to not only let down our own guard, but also to hold the space for others to do the same. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we give others permission to follow suit. In our relationships, whether with family, friends, or colleagues, we need to demonstrate empathy and understanding. We need to show through our words and actions that it is safe to be imperfect, to make mistakes, and to struggle. Too often, we dismiss people's vulnerabilities without even realizing it. We might be quick to offer solutions, to rush to fix things, or to gloss over someone's difficult emotions because we don't know how to handle them. But what people need in those moments is not a quick fix or a pat answer. They need presence. They need someone to listen, to witness their experience, and to offer compassion, not to solve their problems, but simply to sit with them in their vulnerability. Sometimes making space for vulnerability means giving people the time and space to express themselves fully without interruption or judgment. It means resisting the urge to offer advice or to relate everything back to our own experiences. While our instinct may be to share how we handled a similar situation, true vulnerability requires us to hold back from offering solutions and instead focus on listening. When we listen deeply and without judgment, we create an environment where others feel understood and supported. This allows them to let down their guard even more, knowing that they are being seen and heard in their full humanity. But it's not just about listening. Making space for others' vulnerability also means holding space for discomfort. Sometimes vulnerability feels messy, raw, or unpolished. It doesn't always come in neatly wrapped packages of words or emotions. People may share things that make us uncomfortable or things we don't know how to respond to. And that's okay. We don't need to have all the answers or know exactly what to say. In fact, the willingness to simply be present with someone in their discomfort, to acknowledge their pain without trying to fix it, is often one of the most powerful things we can do. At work, making space for vulnerability means fostering a culture of psychological safety where employees feel empowered to speak up, ask questions, and share their struggles without the fear of being penalized or judged. It means creating environments where people can take risks, admit mistakes, and grow without the threat of retribution. It's the opposite of a blame and shame culture, where mistakes are seen as weaknesses and failure is punished. Instead, it's about recognizing that mistakes are part of the learning process, and that true innovation and growth happen when we feel free to take risks, to be wrong, and to learn from those experiences. In teams, this is especially important. When team members feel safe to be vulnerable with each other, they build trust. Trust is the foundation of any successful relationship, and in a team dynamic, it fosters collaboration, creativity, and problem solving. When we can show up as our authentic selves without fear of being judged, we bring our full selves to the table. We share our ideas, contribute our thoughts, and engage in meaningful dialogue without worrying about how we'll be perceived. This is how teams thrive, when each person is able to contribute their strengths, their weaknesses, their uncertainties, and their vulnerabilities. Only then do we unlock the true power of collaboration. In friendships and personal relationships, making space for vulnerability is equally critical. It's about creating a foundation of trust where we can share our fears, hopes, dreams, and struggles without fear of rejection or dismissal. It's about being real with each other, not just sharing the highlights, the wins, and the successes, but also the challenges, the losses, and the moments when we feel like we're barely holding it together. The people in our lives who create that space for us to be vulnerable are the ones who build the deepest and most lasting connections with us. They are the ones we turn to in our darkest moments because we know they will hold us in our vulnerability without judgment, without trying to change us, but with love and understanding. Making space for others' vulnerability requires patience and practice. It requires that we quiet our own fears, our own discomfort, and our own judgments, and instead create an environment where others feel free to express their truths. It requires that we listen, that we show empathy, and that we hold others with kindness and care as they navigate the messiness of their own vulnerability. In doing so, we not only foster stronger relationships, but also create a world where people feel safe enough to show up as their true, imperfect, and beautiful selves. One of the hardest lessons we face on the journey of personal growth, change, or healing is learning how to be kind to ourselves. We're often our own harshest critics, the ones who expect perfection from ourselves and punish ourselves when we inevitably fall short. We tend to be more forgiving toward others, offering them understanding and compassion when they make mistakes, struggle, or take longer than expected to achieve something. Yet when it comes to ourselves, we tend to demand more, be more impatient, and more self-critical. We live in a world that often places an immense amount of pressure on us to achieve, to perform, and to meet unrealistic standards. These expectations, whether they are societal, professional, or personal, often leave us feeling inadequate, not good enough, or even like imposters. We look at other people's successes and compare them to our own struggles, forgetting that everyone's journey is unique. And in that comparison, we lose sight of the fact that every step we take toward our own growth is an achievement in itself. Being kind to yourself in the process of growth doesn't mean excusing mistakes or giving up on improvement. It means recognizing that growth is not linear. It's messy, unpredictable, and at times painful. It means embracing the reality that you are a work in progress, and progress doesn't look the same for everyone. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is give yourself permission to be exactly where you are in that moment, without judgment or expectation of immediate transformation. Think about how often we push ourselves beyond our limits in an attempt to meet external expectations. We push through exhaustion, anxiety, or self-doubt, convincing ourselves that if we keep pushing, if we just try harder, then we'll finally reach our goals. But this approach doesn't allow for the natural ebbs and flows of life. It doesn't honor the fact that we are human beings with emotions, limitations, and personal histories that shape our experiences. Instead, we need to understand that kindness is not just an action we take toward others, it's something we must extend inwardly as well. Being kind to yourself starts with the recognition that you are allowed to be imperfect. It's about understanding that vulnerability, doubt, and uncertainty are all part of the human experience. When you allow yourself the space to feel those things without judgment, you create the foundation for true self-compassion. You realize that you are not defined by your failures, mistakes, or shortcomings. You are defined by your resilience, your willingness to keep going, and your capacity to learn, grow, and adapt. The importance of self-compassion cannot be overstated. It's essential for emotional resilience. If you're constantly berating yourself for not measuring up to some ideal or not meeting a deadline, you will burn out. You'll start to resent the very process that's supposed to be helping you grow. Instead, when you practice self-compassion, you give yourself the grace to fail, to stumble, and to start over. You become your own ally in the struggle rather than your own enemy. One way to cultivate kindness toward yourself is by recognizing your inner dialogue. How often do you hear yourself thinking or saying things like, "I'm not good enough, I'll never get this right," or "I should be farther along by now"? These thoughts are the product of unrealistic standards and societal pressures. They create unnecessary suffering by reinforcing the belief that you are inadequate. The truth is, you are enough. You are worthy of love, patience, and understanding, especially from yourself. A simple shift in how you speak to yourself can make a huge difference. Instead of being harsh or judgmental, try offering yourself words of encouragement. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to a friend who is struggling, someone you deeply care about. Offer yourself the same compassion and empathy that you would extend to others. Another critical aspect of being kind to yourself is recognizing your needs and honoring them. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle, to feel like you're always behind, or that you have to be constantly busy to prove your worth. But rest is just as important as work. Listening to your body, acknowledging when you're tired, stressed, or overwhelmed, and giving yourself permission to take a break or ask for help is not weakness, it is strength. It's an acknowledgement that you are a human being with limits, and those limits deserve respect. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is to pause, recharge, and give yourself the space to breathe. This is where the concept of boundaries comes in. Being kind to yourself also means setting healthy boundaries that allow you to protect your energy, your time, and your well-being. Boundaries are not selfish, they are necessary for your emotional health. If you constantly put others' needs before your own, saying yes to everything and everyone, you'll soon find yourself depleted, burnt out, and resentful. Establishing boundaries, whether in your personal relationships, at work, or even with yourself, is a vital form of self-care. It ensures that you are not overextending yourself to the point of exhaustion, but instead you are creating space for yourself to grow, heal, and thrive. Being kind to yourself also means celebrating the small wins. We tend to overlook the little moments of progress, always focused on the bigger picture, the long-term goals, the distant achievements. But every step forward, no matter how small, is worth acknowledging. It's important to pause and reflect on how far you've come, rather than always looking at how far you still have to go. Self-kindness is about recognizing that progress doesn't have to be monumental to be meaningful. Whether it's a personal insight you've gained, a relationship you've nurtured, or simply getting through a difficult day, celebrate those moments. They matter. And let's not forget that being kind to yourself also means practicing patience. The journey of growth, healing, or self-improvement takes time. It's not something that happens overnight, and it's not something you can rush. If you're always in a hurry to get somewhere, to be somewhere other than where you are, you miss the richness of the experience. Self-compassion involves patience, trusting that you are exactly where you need to be, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. It's about understanding that healing isn't linear, and that's okay. There will be ups and downs, peaks and valleys, but each moment is part of the process. In conclusion, the journey of self-compassion, vulnerability, and growth is not a path of perfection, but one of acceptance and understanding. As we navigate the complexities of life, it's essential that we create spaces for ourselves and others to be vulnerable, to embrace uncertainty, and to learn from the process rather than fixating on the destination. This isn't about achieving perfection, it's about progress. It's about recognizing that we are all imperfect beings, and that's okay. When we are kind to ourselves, when we give ourselves permission to be human, we create the foundation for real growth. We make space for mistakes, for moments of doubt, and for the quiet, beautiful moments of learning that happen in the process. The more we embrace this kindness, the more we can share it with others, allowing them the same grace to be imperfect and to grow. In doing so, we build a community not only of growth and progress, but also of true connection, trust, and support. It is in these spaces of vulnerability and compassion that we find our deepest strength, not in our ability to always be right or perfect, but in our willingness to show up as we are and to allow others to do the same. Thank you.